Hey guys, it's Josh Rossi. Today what we're going to be doing is we are going to go over this image from start to finish. I'm going to show you how to recreate all of the effects, all of the shrapnel, the smoke. We're going to go over a lot of things. I'm also going to show you how to dodge and burn. And this image originally took about 20 hours to edit in Photoshop, and we're going to trim it down to under 2 hours. So we're going to go pretty quick here, but a lot of the things in this image are pretty simple to recreate. So let's go ahead and get started here. This is the after. Obviously you guys have seen this, the finalized image. Now this is the before. And I've actually done a few things to kind of get us started and to save some time here. First thing I did is I merged the whole background. I took maybe 5 photos. There was probably one right there, one right there, there, something like that. So it was probably around 6 photos I took. Then I photo merged them, and this is just the background right here. This excludes the sky. So what I did is I went to let's see, where's it at? File, Automate, and then photo merge. And it's taking an awesomely long time. Okay. So once I was in photo merge, I add open files, because what I did is I brought in all of these pictures I took, and I went to collage. So the files showed up here. I went to collage and pushed OK, and that merged them in this way. And then second thing I did is I added a sky here. You can see there's the mountains and the sky, and I just turned it black and white. And then I added all of my men here. So it's going to be up to you guys to place them however you want. And you can see there, all the guys are separate. So now I have all these layers here just to save time. This is what I've previously done. And we're going to go over all of the settings. And I'm actually going to recreate everything. So don't worry, I'm not just going to show you really quickly how I did it, but I'm going to go into detail as to how you create these things. So let's first go over the lighting of the background and the coloring. Originally I wanted to do this more of a red color, but after looking at it, I decided to do it bluish. And so let me show you what all these settings do. I'm going to turn all these on. Take a look. It makes it look like it's nighttime, a lot darker, a lot more ominous and dramatic. So let's go over these settings here. First setting is levels. So to do that, I just created an adjustment layer. Just went down here, clicked, and went to levels. And so here I am on my levels. Settings here, all I did was I changed the RGB channel. So the left slider, which controls the shadows, I brought it over just a little bit, and then the midtones over here, I brought them over a tiny bit as well. So that's all I did for the levels. Super simple, just made everything darker. The reason I did that, let me show you that again. The reason I brought the midtones over, actually, hold up. Alright, the reason I brought the midtones over was because I didn't want everything to look too dark like that. I wanted to keep some detail in the shadows, so I just kind of moved this over a tiny bit. And oops, where were we at here? Something like that. I was at 60 something. Okay, 65. Alright, so the midtones will keep some detail in the shadows. And yeah, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. I decided to do a second curves layer because I didn't like how light that still was. I want it to be a little bit darker. So let's look at my settings here. Again, this does more of the shadows down here. This does more of the highlights. And so I brought my little thingy here, the line, I brought that up a tiny bit, brought that down a little bit. So you can see that is getting the shadows right there. See, and then it'll lighten up the shadows or darken them up. So anyway, those are my settings on that. And right now it's not looking too good. It's looking a little bit too contrasty. So I wanted to add some hue and saturation. Wanted to desaturate it a tiny bit. You can see that barely desaturated it. So settings there, it's only at negative 33. Just brought that slider down a little bit. And then my last one was a color balance. And remember, this is all down here. I'm doing a adjustment layer. So I went to color balance. Take a look. It's a nice blue color there. So let me show you the settings for that. All I did was let's see if I moved the highlights a little bit. I moved the midtones, and shadows just stayed at 0. So first thing I did was I went to midtones, and I changed the cyan to negative 19. So I just brought it over a little bit because I want to make this a little bit more blue. And also I brought the blues to 21. Also on the highlights, I did towards cyan I did negative 11, and towards blue I did positive 11. The reason I did highlights on this is just because it was looking a little bit flat without them. So you can see here the difference. There, I'll just do like positive or just 11. So it was a little bit flat, so I just wanted to add a little bit more brightness, a little bit of color in those highlights. So that's why I changed the highlights that way. Alright, so now you got this image. Background's looking a lot better than before. Let me show you before and after. Check that out, huge difference. So it's looking like it's nighttime. Thing is, all these guys here, they're just not matching at all. They have no shadows, nothing. I just placed them there. And we're going to go ahead and add shadows and a bunch of other stuff. So let's go ahead here and let's start adding the shadows to these people. So first dude we're going to add shadows to is this guy right here. You can see it just looks like he's cut out. There's no shadows. It's not matching at all. So let me show you the shadows that I created here. Actually, that's shadows for everybody. So see that? It's just filling in all that area right there. Thing is, you're not going to see down here because there's a bunch of fire, so that doesn't really matter. Thing that I was worried about was right here, and that's what we got. So take a look again. It's just a tiny bit darker, makes them blend in a little bit more. I'll show you how I do that. So basically, you want to create, I'm just going to click anywhere here. Let's say, let's actually go up to the guy here. So I have called him, let's see, Blue Dead because he's on the ground. Okay. So what you want to do is create an empty layer underneath the guy that you want to add the shadow to. So click on, I guess, a layer below, and just click on this little icon here, creates a layer, and just call it shadow. Okay, now that you got that layer, blending mode, you're just going to keep to normal. You want to hit B on your keyboard, so you go to your brush, make sure it's black, just a solid black. Let me make it a little bit smaller here. And the opacity, I usually go somewhere around 50, something like that. Okay, and remember you want a soft brush on these shadows. Sometimes it varies. Sometimes you want a little bit harder brush. For now though, what we're going to do is get a softer brush. So just go to something like that. You can see that the hardness is at 0%. So on this shadow down here, check that out. You just paint underneath. And that's not going to affect the top layer, obviously, because that's underneath. So just paint in some more there. You might need to do a couple swipes. So that's pretty good for over there, right there. Then remember I wanted to make this a little bit darker, so you just dab a little bit right there. Check that out. That was super easy, super simple. Let's add a shadow to somebody else so you guys can see a better example here. This dude right here, he obviously doesn't really fit too well into the background. Neither do these guys. So we're going to add a shadow to this rocket launcher guy right here. So I'm going to go back to this. Okay, there he is, blue rocket. An easy way to find something that you're working on is holding down Command on the keyboard and just clicking. So take a look. I clicked on that guy and it took me right to him. So if I want to add a shadow to this guy, click right on him and it takes me right to him. So let's do the same thing. Create an empty layer right underneath and just call it shadow. And let's zoom up here a little bit. And let's see, pick your brush. It's taking a second here to load. So pick your brush again. And let's zoom up to the feet down here. Okay. Okay, so actually I want to make my brush a little bit smaller here. Computer's kind of going slow here. Alright, awesome. Okay. Alright, this image is huge. It's like 13,000 by 6,000 pixel dimensions, so that's why it's taking forever. Alright, now that you got your soft brush, I'm going to show you how to create these shadows on the feet area right here. Because this is kind of tough sometimes to make it look real. Sometimes you might put a shadow like that, and the thing is, it looks like he's still stepping off the ground, which is weird. So what you want to do is, that's why it's at 50%, is because you don't want a super dark line. Let me show you. You don't want a super dark line like that. It just makes no sense. So go down to 50 again, somewhere around there, and kind of feather it out a little bit, something like that. And then you want to make your brush a little bit smaller, and you want to make it darker the closer it is to his foot. Right there, just a little bit darker. That's going to match him up a lot better to the background. Okay, same thing back here. Just a little bit more. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing here. So remember, make your brush a little bit bigger, kind of brush over like that, and then make it darker closer to his foot. That is going to make it look like he is actually stepping on the ground and he's not off the ground. Because let me show you what happens over here. We're going to make a bad shadow right here, so this is a bad example of a really heavy shadow that's not close to his foot, right over here. See that? It looks like he's stepping off the ground. So if you want to create a shadow looking like he's on the ground, you create shadows close to his foot and you make it dark. See that? Huge difference. So now on this whole image on the background, it was overcast. So there's no directional light here. You can see it's coming from over here a little bit. It's a little bit lighter on this, on like the wall over here and everything. So I'm not going to create a definite shadow in any direction. So I'm not going to create it this way or this way because it's just kind of even lighting. So I want to create one in the middle. See that? Super easy. Just created that shadow right there. These shadows aren't going to matter too much. You don't need to be too precise with these because there's going to be a bunch of explosions and so much stuff going on here. So basically that's what I did with everybody here. So I'm not going to go through and make shadows on everybody. But let me show you here. We can go back down to our shadows. And that is what I did. You can see I just added some darkness over here, right there. And some darkness over here. And these guys in the air you don't really notice. Okay, so that's good for the shadows. So let's move on now. I'm actually going to turn that layer on. And turn this layer off. Okay. So now that we've done the shadows, the next thing we're going to do, and one of the most important things that makes the image come together, is the dodging and burning, in my opinion. There's a lot of things that go into it. There's a lot of things that go into the image that match it up really well. You know, the coloring, the smoke, the fog, kind of the atmosphere you create. But one of the big things is dodging and burning. That's going to make the image match with the background. It's going to match up the lighting, a lot of other things. So let's go ahead and get started with dodging and burning. I'm going to show you how to dodge and burn on this guy right here. And then I've previously dodged and burned all of them, and that's probably going to take the longest amount of time. It took me, I think, a couple hours, 2.5 hours to dodge and burn on everybody. And the way that I do it, it's really particular and it's really detail oriented. You don't have to do it this way, but I'm just going to show you how I do it. So let's choose this guy right here. So remember, hold down Command and click right there. It'll choose that guy. And let's zoom up on him a little bit. Something like that. Okay. Alright, so the whole purpose of dodging and burning, a lot of you might know this, some of you might not, but it is to either lighten up certain areas or darken certain areas. So to start off, what you want to do is create a blank layer above the guy that you're going to dodge and burn on, or whatever you were going to dodge and burn on, and just call it DB for dodge and burn, and then specify green leader, because that's the green leader right there. So DB green leader. Now you want to turn this to soft light, and that's really important because that's going to make everything. I'll just show you the difference, but that's something important you need to know. Soft light for that layer, as far as the blending mode goes. Next thing you need to do is you need to create a clipping mask, so what you're dodging and burning only affects what you want. So what you do is you hold down Option or Alt, and you go in between the lines there, and you just click. Oops. Click. See how it does that arrow? That means that it's a clipping mask. So let me show you what that actually does. So I'm going to hurry up here and show you. So take a look here. I'm painting out here, but nothing's happening. When I paint on this guy, it's only affecting him, which is awesome. So I don't need to worry about doing any other techniques or whatever. Clipping mask takes care of that, so I don't go out of bounds, which is really nice. So go to your brush, and you want to make sure to paint with black and white. That's the basics of dodging and burning. So paint with black and white and have the soft light layer. Super simple. And then you want to paint at around 20 or somewhere around there, opacity, and then you want a soft brush. So hardness is 0%. Okay, so let's get started here. I usually start painting with black. That is my main color, and then I go through with white and paint what I need. So let me just show you what I do here. So I want this image, the purpose of dodging and burning on this guy right now is that I want him to pop a little bit more. I don't want him to stick out of the background, but I want him to be a little bit more contrasty. Because you see the background here is super contrasty, he's not really that much. So when I do this, I zoom in pretty far. Right now I'm on a big computer, so I don't have to zoom up that far, but usually I'm up like 100%, maybe 200% sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to show you first with darks, or with my black. All I do is I make a nice stripe right there. The reason for that is because I want this to be a little bit darker. So I'm just going to go over that, maybe a little bit more precise. Okay. And then I'm looking for places that aren't so dark, that need some darkening. Maybe like in there, could use a little bit, maybe right there. And maybe some along there, okay? And I can see an obvious, there's some lightness over here and some darkness over here. I want to make that a little bit more contrasty. So you can see now the difference. That was kind of flat, that's a little bit more contrasty. Then I'm going to go over some dark right there. And I'm overlapping a tiny bit, which is okay. You don't want to do it too much. Overlapping as in, you don't want to overlap, you know, the line right there, because it'll kind of take away the sharpness. So okay, let's do some more here. I want that to be a little bit darker, also under there, tiny bit darker, right there. Okay, and I also want this to be a little bit more contrasty. There's some darkness right here, and there's some lightness, so I'm gonna make my brush a little bit bigger, and just kind of brush like that, a little bit less. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Alright, let's move on. So this needs a little bit to be a little bit darker right there, maybe underneath. And you can just see kind of my brush strokes. You want to do just nice even strokes. Here's an obvious one right here. Want that a little bit darker. And then also underneath the visor here. And this is just with black. Remember, we're going to go through and paint with white as well. So here I'm noticing that there's some lightness and some darkness. I want to make this part a little bit darker. So add some contrast. Maybe around here, around the edges. See how nice that is? Like, let me show you the difference. So flat, not flat. You know, adds a lot of contrast, a lot of cool effects there. The reason why it looks painted the way that I do it is because I'm basically painting over the whole image just like a painter would. And I'm just going over with black and white, making it darker and lighter in certain areas. And that's kind of why it looks painted. So let's see here. There's some darkness here. I want to make a little bit darker. And now on the visor here, let's add some contrast. So there's some darkness right there, I want to get, and also right here. And I'm going in and focusing on these tiny details, and that's kind of the essence of the way that I dodge and burn. I focus on tiny details, and it takes forever, but it looks super cool afterwards. Okay, maybe some darkness right there. And I want to make this a little bit dark. Let's see. Okay, so on this thing here, same thing. On each side, you want some darkness, and then later we're gonna go through and add some light in there. But take a look now, specifically at this right here. What a difference it made. So it's flat, not anymore. So a lot of you might know how to dodge and burn. I'm just gonna show you, like I said, how I do it. And how I do it is I'm very particular with details, just like this stuff. So I go through and add some detail there, right there, and these are dark enough, so that's fine. And I also go through and get little stuff like that, and maybe a little bit right there. Okay. And let's see now. Alright, so there's some definite darkness here, and it's looking really flat. So I'm just gonna make my brush a little bit bigger and just go over right there. Same thing over here, and you can bleed over because remember we have a clipping mask. It's not gonna affect the background there. This is looking pretty flat over here to me. So let's paint in some darkness. And also right here. I'm going over this part, which is fine. I don't really care too much about that. The main part I want to focus on is this one right here. Okay, let's back up a little bit. So you can see the difference. Flat image, it's looking a lot better. Alright, so same thing. That's pretty much what you're going to do on this whole image. I'm going to go through and show you how I do this really quickly, and then you can go through and do the rest on the other dudes. So there's an obvious darkness right there I want to get. And also on the inside here, I'm just doing this pretty quickly. Also right there, maybe underneath. And I mean, this is really similar to painting, digital painting. I mean, obviously it's not as detailed, but it's pretty detailed. Okay, so I'm getting that dark line right there. I also want to focus on some darkness right there, maybe that line. And on his bicep here, I'm going to get some of that. Okay, and let's see, down here there's some. So let me show you this. I'm putting some darkness right here, and it's bleeding over a little bit, but that's black, so you're not really going to tell that much. The reason I did that is because there's some, you can see there's lightness over here and some lightness over here. I wanted those to pop a little bit more, so I just put a nice stripe right there in the middle. Same with here. It's kind of blending together the darkness and the dark and the light. So I'm gonna put a little stripe right there. Okay. All right. So let's see here. Let's get the glove. So paint in some dark. See that? It was a lot lighter. Just darker. It's looking really cool now. And let's get some of the finger here. So this is pretty simple. It's not. I mean, I'm used to doing it a certain way. You guys might be used to doing it a different way. Like I said, I focus on tiny details and I do a lot of it. So let me show you down here on the shirt. Actually, I don't want to focus on that. The reason I don't want to get that is because I don't want to make it look like he has a t-shirt on. So I might actually take those out later. I want to make it look like he has this body armor on, and if I focus on these wrinkles here, it's just going to look weird. So let's continue on with black. There's some darkness over here I want to get. Okay, and I'm not really going to focus on the gun right now. I'm just showing you the main dodging and burning on this guy's armor here. Okay, so now let's switch to white. And this is a totally different, I mean, it's the same technique, but it does a totally different thing. It lights everything up. And so instead of darkening, it'll lighten things. So what you want to do is hit X on your keyboard. That'll switch from black to white there. And let's go ahead and start painting. You're going to paint all in the same layer. That's what I do. You could make a second layer and paint white if you're worried about making mistakes. I'm just used to doing this, so I paint on the same layer. So with your whites, you want to create a shine. This is at least how I'm dodging and burning. I like creating shines on like an image, like on this guy right here. So what I'm going to do is make my brush a little bit bigger, kind of go over some white right here, maybe bring it out, and then to create a shine I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and just paint some more right there in the middle. Same thing with over here, just underneath. I'm just doing a few nice brush strokes. Same thing with over here. Even though it's really bright, I still like adding some light to that. And then let's see here, there's like a little highlight right there. Oops. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Tiny highlight right there you want to get. And let's see where else. I mean, there's small, super small details here. Something I like doing. Actually, I'm going to switch back to black really quick. So hit X on the keyboard. And notice that's looking kind of flat. So I'm just going to add some darkness right there. And maybe up here too. Just a little bit. Okay, switch back to your white. I don't like that. Okay. So something I like to do sometimes is I like to create these highlights that aren't really there. So see how that's looking kind of flat? What I do is I make the brush a little bit smaller and just kind of go right in the middle like that. And it creates a really slight highlight, but it'll bring the whole image together. Let's start right there. Let's focus on this white right here just because it's not so bright. Over here it is, but over here not so much. Get some brightness right there, and we forgot. I'm going to go back to my black, so hit X on the keyboard, and I'm going to get that right there. And also on the top of his helmet, we didn't really get much there, so also going to get that. This is with my black. Remember, I'm just going over some details I missed. Okay. And maybe somewhere there. Alright, go back to your white then. Okay, so let's focus on this area over here. So I want to make that a little bit brighter. Focusing on the highlights, remember. And this is looking a little bit dull here, so I'm going to create a shine. Make your brush a little bit bigger, then a little bit smaller. Paint some more in there. I'm going to paint a little bit over here in this direction. And alright, so anyway, you guys get the point. Same thing with over here. I'm gonna be really detailed. This is how I usually am. I'm just pretty much going quick so you guys can get the gist of it. But this looks pretty good. I'm satisfied with this. Let's do some more white. So make your brush a little bit bigger. Go down here, maybe a nice stripe right there. So I'm basically just going over all the light spots and then the dark spots with this dodging and burning. Just to highlight certain areas and just darken certain areas. Lighten that. I'm just going quick now. I like this shine up here. I'm going to focus on that. Maybe a little bit brighter. And maybe in here. Oops. Brighten this up a little bit. Maybe I can tell there's some dark right here, and it kind of circles this little area. I'm just going to highlight that a little bit. Maybe some in there. Okay. And I don't like that too much. It's sticking out too much, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to switch to my black brush and kind of brush over right there. Same thing here. Switch to my white. Okay. And then right here, I go over all of this brightness over here. Perfect. Okay. So that's looking really good already. You can tell that it's looking somewhat painted and surreal. Let me show you before and after. So before it's just a picture, after it's looking really cool. It's looking very contrasty, just like the background. Alright, so basically I just went through and did some dodging and burning on the rest of the guys here to save some time. So to show you on this flamethrower guy right here, what I did, that's before and that's after, just with the dodging and burning. So before it's kind of flat, after he's matching up with the background a lot better. Really contrasty, it's really nice. So that's what I did with everybody else. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create some fog in the background just to bring the image together. So this is what I previously created right there, and I'm going to show you how to do this. You can, analyzing this picture, you can see that it's kind of blotchy, which you want. You don't want it to be completely solid. It actually depends on the type of fog that you want, but for this, we're not going to make it completely solid. So you can see there's some it's really light over here, there's some blotchiness, and then some darkness. Same with over here, and over here, and also up in here. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to turn these layers off. What you want to do is create a blank layer underneath everything and just call it fog. And for this, go to your brush and make sure your opacity is at 100% and make sure you're painting with white. And then you're going to go to an awesome fog brush. So pretty simple. Just click on it. I'm just going to pick that one. There's a lot of awesome brushes on the internet, and yeah, so you just grab your brush and start painting. I mean, super simple here. Like nothing complicated. You can already see, and make sure there's some brushes that are solid and some that are more blotchy, like this one. So I'm really liking this brush. And again, make sure to put it to 100% opacity. If you don't, it's not going to come out bright enough. You can see at 100% this is pretty, it looks like it's at 50% opacity. So okay, so keep painting in exactly where you want all the fog to be, and this is pretty simple. The hard part would be just making it look real and making it look like it's actually there, because sometimes, I mean, you just paint in random spots like this and it'll look good. If you do like just a straight up stripe, it might look weird. I mean, that doesn't look too bad right there, but you know, you kind of have to be a little bit blotchy, just kind of paint in here and there. So it's up to you, it's up to your eye and what you think looks best. But see, I'm basically just painting here. This is with one brush. I mean, super simple. You could even combine brushes and add in some more texture. So I'm liking this a lot here. Okay, so anyway, you guys get the point. And I'm just going over it again and again. In certain spots I might want it to look a little bit brighter than other spots. And with fog, it's not going to be, like I said earlier, it's not going to be completely white. That's just going to look weird. It's going to have some blotchiness, some parts that are coming through. I mean, sorry, not some parts, some of the background you can see through the fog. That's just kind of how fog is supposed to look. And so let's see here, just painting in some more. So that's looking pretty good. So you guys get the point. That is how you put in the fog. Super simple. It's just a fog brush and you just paint it in, dabbing here and there, and yeah, just get it to where it looks good. I'm just doing this really quick. I just showed you kind of what I did. You can paint in more here. That's looking pretty good. For now, that's just the background fog. I'm going to turn off that layer, and I'm going to turn on the ones that I previously did. See, pretty close, and it's super simple. You can see on the one that I already did, I made certain parts a little bit brighter, and certain parts a little bit dimmer, like over here and over here. And, you know, the fog maybe took me half an hour to, you know, looking at it, going back and forth, figuring out what looks good, what doesn't. This took me, what, 2 minutes? And it still looks semi-good. So anyway, pretty simple. There's the fog. So next thing we want to do is we want to add some fire from this guy right here. I'm going to show you how to create that fire from just a simple stock image. Totally simple. And I already opened up the file here called flamethrower. So this is just a stock image of just fire, just whatever, some explosion going on. What you want to do, so I'm going to double click here, make it a layer so I can start erasing it. Go to your eraser, hit E on the keyboard, and probably opacity around 100, and just kind of erase around, you know, some of the background parts right here. Just get rid of that hose. Something like this until you get, you want to make sure all the background is gone there. Until you get just the flame. Okay, now that you have just the flame there, you want to switch brushes because you want it to match. You don't want this line right here, that just looks nasty. So go to your brushes and you're going to pick a smoke brush, and I've included these files. And if you don't like these brushes, you can go and get different ones on the internet. But here's my smoke brushes. So I'm going to click on this one. And remember, this is my eraser, so I hit E on the keyboard. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Check this out. We're going to erase, so it's not a flat line anymore. It's going to simulate smoke and like that sort of thing. So I'm at 100% opacity. And I'm just bringing it in a tiny bit here. Okay, just get rid of some of the dark areas and just erase around this whole thing here. And actually we won't even need that, so I'm going to erase all that. Maybe some more there. Paint around, make sure there's no hard edges. And let's see, we're almost done here. Okay, and you can actually switch up brushes if you'd like. There's some different brushes that are cool. Like for that area right there, that's what I wanted that brush for. Oh, it's going kind of slow. Okay. And we're going to get rid of all of this here. Maybe bring it in a little bit. So remember, you are just bringing in a tiny bit, just so all the darkness gets erased. And that's not going to matter. It's a little bit, you're kind of erasing some of the fire, but that's okay. Not a problem. Okay. Alright, now that we got that done, bring this into your image. Okay, and we want to bring it over the top of our flamethrower. So wherever he's at, let's just bring him, I'll just put it at the top of everything so we know. Okay, flamethrower, there he is. Alright, I'm just going to call it flame. Okay, so now it's looking a little bit small. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, and I want to turn it a tiny bit. So hit Command T on the keyboard to get your transform tool. Turn it a little bit to match the angle of his gun, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Just like this. Maybe a little bit bigger. Okay, something like that. Change the direction a little bit. Okay, so now you have this really bad hard edge, and then it's kind of blurry along the outsides. So you want to fix that a little bit. So what you're going to do now is go back to your eraser and just do the same thing you're doing before. Just erase along this hard edge around there so it doesn't exist anymore. You can see how the eraser is making this cool, it's not really a hard edge, but it's looking more like fire, like that. Okay. So now go to your brush. What we're going to do, once you have this image and you've erased and you have somewhat the shape of what you want, you're going to go to your, sorry, not brush, you're going to hit S on the keyboard, which takes you over here to your clone stamp tool. With the clone stamp, you want to pick the same brush, the same smoke brush right there. Make it a little bit bigger, and all you're going to be doing now is cloning in certain parts of the fire, which is super simple. So let me show you here. So what I do is I hold down Option or Alt, and I click on, let's say this part here because I want a little bit dark. I don't want this brightness over here because it won't make sense. I want this kind of textured darkness right here. So I hold down Option Alt, click right there, and then I come over here and add some fire to the edges there. Okay, and then I want this maybe a little bit darker over here. Remember, make sure your opacity is at 100, even on the clone stamp. So I'm going to clone from this dark red over here, and then maybe some of this more textured area. Okay. So basically that is the whole gist of it, and you are also going to want to go around the edges that are too soft maybe. You're going to want to add in some fire like that, and you can also texture these to make them look more real. So for example, I'm going to go here in this brighter area, click right there, and let's get that so you can see that that's really bright. Then you kind of go to this darker orangey area, and you can add in some texture right there. So it's looking pretty cool. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but anyway, that's basically what you need to do. Just keep cloning around. You know, you can make your brush a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, and whatever. I feel like I have too much over here, so I'm going to go to my eraser and erase some of this. Something like that, and I'm actually going to switch up to this one. Actually, that's what I was on, sorry. Let's go back to this brush. Okay, now I'm going to add in some more, so go back, hit S on the keyboard, go back to your clone stamp, and add in some fire around these areas over here. I'm just kind of speeding this up. And another good thing is you can change the direction that it's going to make them a little bit more interesting. So to do that, go to Window, Brush. That's going to take you to all your brush presets. This little thing here, you just drag the arrow and it twists it a little bit. So I'm going to clone from over here, maybe give it some darkness, even right there. Then maybe I'll turn this a little bit more. Something like that. Okay, so it's already looking pretty cool. Then all I did underneath here was the same thing because there's some fire coming up this way. I basically, actually on this, instead of recreating it, undo that, all I did was I copied the layer and hit Command T, kind of turned it sideways, and brought it down just like this. And that created this sort of, this look like he was dragging the flamethrower across and burning this whole area. And you can see there's some edge issues that we have here. I'm not going to focus too much on those, but that is the gist of it. That's how you create the fire. So, you know, you might want to erase some right there. Alright, so that's what I did in like 5 minutes. The actual thing took me a little bit longer. Looks a lot better. You can see here, I'm going to zoom up on this so you can see some of the edge work I've done. Okay, so you can see some of the edge work that I've done over here, and it's kind of blurry. It's not a hard edge, which I liked, and so yeah, that's what I did. Let's see here. Oops, not that one. Okay. Alright, good. So now that we got our flame, let's go ahead and let's start adding some of the light from this flame. We got to add highlights to every guy, because right now it doesn't really look like there's a flame there. Even though we've drawn it in, basically, and we painted it in, we still need some highlights on these guys. Let me show you the finished image, okay? So there's a lot of highlights over here. There's a highlight on the dude. There's highlights over here, over here. So let's go ahead and create those right now. Okay, so we're going to go ahead now and create some reflections on these guys from the fire going on here. So I'm going to focus on this guy first. Basically, all you want to do is create a layer right above, make it a clipping mask, and just call it highlight. Hope I'm spelling that right. I feel like I keep spelling those wrong. Highlight, and just turn it to an overlay, blending mode. And then you're going to pick a brush, go to around 35% opacity, just really soft edged, so hardness at 0%. And then you want to pick a color that is similar to this flame over here. So let's see, maybe something like that, and I'm actually going to make that a little bit lighter. Okay. So that should be good. And then all you're going to do, so make sure you have the clipping mask over the image that you want to create a highlight on. And all you're going to do is super simple, just paint on the person where the highlight would be. So super easy. The only hard part would be just trying to figure out how this reflection is going to look on the guy. So I'm just going to show you here how I do this. So the closer it is, obviously, to the flame, the brighter it's going to be. And I'm going to put some underneath here because this is kind of shadowing. It's going to be kind of shadowing over here. So there's not going to be much orange reflection on that. Maybe just underneath here. Some right there. On his knee. And then what I do here is I make the brush pretty small, and then I kind of do a nice brush over where the reflection will be, and then I make it a little bit bigger and maybe just dab a little bit. And that blends in that reflection a lot more. Same thing up here. What I'm going to do actually is I'm going to make my brush bigger and just kind of feather that over just like that and make it maybe a little bit brighter the closer it is. And then he's definitely going to have some right here because this is exposed to the light, and maybe feather it a tiny bit. And he's definitely going to have some on his chest. Okay. And maybe also some on his arm over here. Maybe not, because it could be shadowed. Okay. So now it's looking okay, but I want to erase some to blend it in a little bit more. Go to your eraser and go to opacity, maybe around 20 or something. And you're just going to erase a little bit here. So the closer it is, the brighter it is again. And that's kind of an obvious thing. And so you want to erase some towards the back over here where it's the further away it is from the light. You want to erase a little bit that way. And maybe a little bit up here. I'm actually going to erase some underneath the arm a little bit more. And just blend it in a little bit. Okay, and I feel like there should be more over here too. See, if you bleed over onto this thing, you can just erase. So go to your eraser and maybe turn the opacity up, and then you can just erase. Just like that. Maybe I'm going to erase a little bit there. Okay, and go back down to 20% opacity and finish up what I was doing before. It's a little bit bright right there. Okay, let's take a look at that. So that's looking really good. It's an obvious, reflection on him, and I'm gonna go ahead and do this guy down here. So basically, he's getting just burned to death. So you want to, let's actually create a clipping mask over him. So the same thing. So we found him right there, blue dead. Create a blank layer. Just call it the same thing. Highlight and create a clipping mask. So hold down Option or Alt. There you go. And make sure that is set to overlay. And the overlay is going to create, I'm going to show you the difference between these. I'm going to use my same color here to paint on this guy. Let me show you the difference between the blending modes. So an overlay is what I use, and it looks really good here. Let's just paint over this guy first, and then I'll change the blending modes to show you the difference between those. So basically, you have to have a lot of color right here because of how hot the flame is and how close it is to him. So the further away it gets, you're not really going to want to paint that much over here. Paint inside his hand, underneath his arm there, and it can wrap around a little bit. And I'm going to turn that up a tiny bit. Okay, so this is the thing. Sometimes it won't paint anymore because it's painted a solid color. So look, this is what I mean. It's painted a solid color because I painted so much on it. So what you want to do, so let's say it's an overlay right now. What you can do is actually duplicate the layer. And if it's too bright, you can erase some. So remember, I'm at 20% opacity. You can erase some over here to get some more detail in those highlights. Something like that. So that looks pretty good. It's a little bit bright right here. Erase a little bit more. I'm going to paint more down here. And erase. Okay. So now let me show you. I'm going to undo that one. Let me go to this layer right here. And let me show you what the different blending modes do. So overlay is the one that I prefer for these, for highlights. If I go to soft light, it definitely does not look like a highlight. Hard light is very weird as well. Screen, and you can just play around with these. The one that I found works best is overlay. So you take a look, that's pretty much the one that I always use. So I'm going to go back and click that one on. Okay, so what I did to save time is I already put the highlights on all these guys. I just gave you an example of how to do it over here on these two soldiers. So yeah, I'll see you in a minute. Alright, so I went ahead and painted on all of these highlights on the other guys just to save some time. Now what we need to do is create some highlights on the ground, and then there's also an explosion over here that I've created, which is right here. And I'll show you how I did that. And then we're going to get into all the small little details like gunfire and bullets coming off of guns and shrapnel and all that cool stuff. And also maybe smoke from this rocket launcher over here. So with this explosion, super simple. It's the exact same thing that I did previously with this. It's actually the same image. So all I did is I copied it and pasted it. And I just flipped it. So I went Control T and I just twisted it a tiny bit. You can see there, that's the flame that we used. All I did was just tipped it like that on its side and placed it right behind the guy there. So same technique. I used the clone stamp tool to clone in some edge stuff over here, some of the flames on the edges. So now let's get to creating the highlight on the ground. So it's a similar idea of creating the highlights on these guys, but you're just creating it on the ground. So you want to make a blank layer and just call it light on ground. Oops. And then go to your overlay blending mode, go to your brush, at maybe same like 40 opacity, something like that. And you're just going to be painting in. So super simple. You just paint where you think there would be more reflection, so closer to the flame, you paint a little bit more. Maybe over here, paint a little bit more, and then it kind of feathers out the further out it goes. And I might actually not do that and make it a little bit bigger. Do something like that right there. Okay. So anyway, that's looking pretty good. I actually previously did it here. So super simple. There you go, and I actually painted some over here. Alright, so now that we got those things out of the way, we need to create some gunfire. So let me show you up here. On this guy on the left, we've already created some gunfire. I'm going to show you how to do that. We also have some smoke coming off there. So to do that, just click on the guy where you want to create the fire, or the gunfire from, and make a blank layer, which I already have there, but I'll do it again. Make a blank layer above and just call it gunfire green left, just so I know what I'm doing here. And on this, you're actually going to leave the blending mode to normal. And I'll show you here in a second why. So go to your brush, and you're going to want to pick a lens flare brush. So one of these here, you can see that they are lens flares. I'm just going to pick this one right here and make it a little bit bigger to start off with. Okay, so the opacity on this, you want to be 100%, and you want to pick the similar color that you use to paint all these highlights. So now what you do, on this gunfire layer, just dab like right where the gunfire is going to be. So now that you've done that, to create a more of a realistic gunfire, what you need to do is you pick a darker color, or I guess a more vibrant color for the bottom layer. Then what you want to do is pick a lighter color for the next layer. Oops. Okay. So all you want to do is just bring the slider a little bit this way, just for the lighter color, and push OK. And then you make your brush a little bit smaller and paint in again. Same thing. Go a little bit brighter there and make your brush a little bit smaller. And it's already looking better. It's looking like you know, the middle of the flame is the hottest, which is good. So then you have to go and pick an even lighter color right there and make your brush even smaller. Something like that is looking pretty good. Now that you have that as your main kind of gunfire thing there, you want to create a layer underneath. Actually, bring this layer underneath your green guy copy. See, so it's looking more real now. It's looking like it's actually coming from the muzzle. Then what you want to do is make a layer above the guy. So there you go. You got two layers, one beneath and one above. So now on the one above, you want to erase a little bit because it's kind of taking up too much space here, I guess, and color. The colors are looking a little bit weird. So go to your eraser, and we're going to pick for this maybe just one of the smoke brushes from before for our eraser, and I'm going to go to around 60% on this. And then you just want to erase around here. And maybe a little bit right there. Okay. Alright, so see, that layer doesn't do too much, but it adds in a little bit of this soft light around the gunfire. Okay, so there's the basics for that. I would actually like to see a little bit more of the muzzle covered up, so I'm going to go to my brush again and just paint in a little bit right there. Make my brush a little bit bigger. Something like that. Okay. Alright, now you need to do one other thing. Actually, a couple other things for this. So go underneath again. Underneath the guy. I'm talking the layers here. And then create another blank layer underneath the gunfire. So it's going to be underneath everything, underneath the gunfire and this guy right here. And just call it gunfire streak. So this gunfire streak here is going to make it look like he's shooting outwards like that. So I'm going to pick a brush that I can use for that. And I might actually go to my lens flares because it already has this sort of pointy edge created for me. See that? All I want to do is create, let me illustrate this a little bit better. All I want to do is create a little line that comes out that way so it looks like the fire is shooting off in that direction. So, like I said, I'm going to go back to my lens flare right here and see how it already has those kind of spiky things. That's all I want to do. I want to go like that. Actually, I'm going to flip this brush a little bit. So go up here to brush, and I'm going to flip it around a bit more. Okay, I'm not really liking this too much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch brushes, and I'm just going to paint with what I originally did, just like that. Okay. Oops. This is taking a minute. Okay. I'm liking that now. So I'm going to go to my eraser and maybe erase a little bit around there. Perfect. Okay. Now I want to create some smoke coming off of here. So go above the gunfire level. So you're going to be painting above everything here. Create another blank layer and just call it smoke on gun. And we are going to go, you're going to pick a white brush here, opacity 100, and then just go to one of your smoke brushes that we've been using. Okay, probably that one right there. And just paint in some smoke. Something like that. It's just coming off the gun a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. Alright, so that smoke is coming off of the gun. So now, there you got your gunfire, and maybe it's a little bit too orange. So if it's too orange for you, you can bring down the color just by clicking on the layer and hitting Command U or going to Hue and Saturation, and just desaturating a tiny bit. Actually, I desaturated a lot, so I'm going to do the same with the top. Alright, something to that effect. Looks good. Alright, so that's our gunfire. So I'm going to show you right then. I did that pretty quickly. I'm going to undo those, and then I'm going to go back to the one I originally created. So you see there, tiny bit different. That took me a little bit more time, but what we did, just barely, was pretty good. So I'm going to erase those layers, and now we have the gunfire. Okay, so I went ahead and just added some of the gunfire from these guys, since I already showed you how to do that one. It's really simple. You can just actually copy and paste it over here and maybe use the transform tool to turn it a little bit and have it match up. So that's pretty simple. Next thing we need to do is create some color in these guys' visors because it's kind of dull right now. So I'm going to show you here what that looks like. See that? Super simple. And I actually did all this on one layer. So let me show you how to go about doing this. Just create a blank layer above where you want the color to be. And I just called it visor color. And once again, you are going to turn it to overlay. And zoom up on, let's say this guy over here. Pick a soft edge brush, and 49-50% should be good. Make sure it's soft edge. And then what you want to do is pick your color similar to, I guess, the color of the fire, so kind of an orangish, maybe a little bit lighter orange. And all you're going to do is paint. See that? It's already looking a lot better. So if you want it to be a little bit stronger, just up the opacity and just go like that. And I actually bled over a little bit onto his faceplate there, as you can see here, just because there's some fire coming from this direction, so I wanted it to bleed onto that a little bit. So anyway, there you go, super simple. So once you've done that, just do it to everybody else, and I've already done that. So you just go in and paint really small into their visors. So next thing we're going to do is add some bullet shells, because these guys right here have these huge guns, and we want to make it look like shells are just popping off of these things. So I've included a file called bulletshells.psd, and so what you want to do is, there's a couple different bullet shells here. Actually, okay, there's a thing, there's two different bullet shells. All you need to do is change the size and the direction, and they will look really good. So let me show you what I've already done here. So here's the bullet shells. Take a look. That's two bullet shells, but you can never tell. I mean, maybe those two look a little bit similar, so you might want to change the direction of one of those. But all you do is you just bring them in and place them where you want them. So you can hit Command T and just kind of turn them. You can even make them a little bit smaller and just have them coming off of here. And I actually sized one pretty big, you know, so I mean, you can do whatever you want. So there's those, and then I also added some over here behind the smoke. So that's pretty simple. Next thing you want to do, let's see, there's a few details here that we need to get. There's some shrapnel that we need to create. There's also, here's the final image. There's also a lens flare I'm going to show you how to create. We'll do this right now. I'll show you how to do the lens flare and also how to do these rocket boosters coming off of this guy. So to start off, let's go to our flyer, is what I called him. All you need to do is create a layer above him, and we will call it rocket boosters. Okay. And this is super simple as well. Go to your white, and opacity go to about 100, and pick this brush over here. It is in the lens flare brushes. You want to make it a little bit bigger. So it's kind of like a heart-shaped weird design thing here. What we're going to do is flip that around to make those rocket boosters like they are firing downward. So go to Window, Brush, and you can just flip it to how you like. Something like that. And I'm going to turn this one a little bit more. Actually a little bit less. And what you want to do is make this one, the one that's further away, just a tiny bit smaller. Okay. That's looking good. I'm going to go to my eraser now, and I can see that there is some, there's like a definite line right there that you want to erase. Okay, so now that we have these rocket boosters, kind of the smoke coming off of those, we need to create some more smoke coming down this way. So what you need to do is create a blank layer right underneath the rocket boosters and just call it rocket booster smoke. And you are going to go to your brush and just pick one of these smoke brushes. So I'm going to pick that one right there. And all you're going to do is simply just make a few dabs just like that. Maybe make them a little bit darker. Something like that. Okay. So once you've dabbed that, all you need to do is add a motion blur. So go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur. And that's going to make it look like he's in action. He's flying up in the air. You want to make sure the direction is correct on these. And just add a little bit more, something like that. Okay, you know what? I feel like I need to make this a little bit better. So instead of putting the smoke so close together, the motion blur is going to blur a lot of that. So you just need to do like a couple, like that. Okay, so now do the same thing again. Go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, and make sure to blur them in the correct direction. And let's see what this looks like now. Okay, so that's not looking too bad. Let's make it a little bit darker up here, so maybe like that, and do the same thing, blur, motion blur. So you're just kind of going back and forth until it looks good. You want to blur that maybe somewhere around there, 140 should be good. Okay, and then also one other thing now is hit Command T for your transform tool, and maybe make them look a little bit more, I guess, in the direction that you want. Okay, something like that is cool. I'm going to erase a little bit over here, so I'm going to go to my eraser and maybe go to 30%. So I just pushed E on the keyboard and maybe erase a little bit under there. Something like that. Okay, so now we need to create a lens flare coming off of these. So similar thing as we've been doing with every other highlight and every other color, you just create a blank layer above the guy and just call it lens flare. And you are going to turn that to an overlay blending mode. Oops, I brought it up a little bit. Just going to put it right there. Just turn it to overlay blending mode. Then go to your brush and pick opacity is just do 100% for now and go to a soft edge brush. And you want to pick a color similar to this, just a blue, a nice blue color. And you're actually going to use the pen tool first. So hit P on the keyboard or go over here to your pen tool. And you want to click off screen and you want to click somewhere over here like that. So create a straight line. To create a super straight line, you hold down shift and click. So see this, I'm clicking up here, but it's still creating a nice perfect line. So that's if you want to create perfect lines. Then what you want to do is you want to connect this and drag it all the way over here. So basically what we're getting is some thickness in the middle and it comes to an edge on each side. And then you want to go inside there, right click, and go make selection and feather at 0. So now go to your brush, and remember we are on this lens flare layer here. Go to your brush, which is at 100% opacity, and just paint in right there. Paint in everything at 100%. Okay, and then hit Command D to deselect. Okay, so that is the base for your lens flare. So what you're going to do is create a couple of these layers and you're going to blur some and some are going to be a little bit more solid, but that's the main idea right there. So now what we're going to do is copy this layer. So hold down Option and just drag it up, and that's just a lens flare copy right there. And what you want to do is you want to make this upper layer a little bit brighter. So what I'm going to do is click W on the keyboard or go over here to the magic wand and just select this and then hold Shift Command I, which will inverse the selection. So we are only going to be focusing on the inside of that. Go back to your brush and all you want to do is pick a lighter color. A little bit lighter, something like that. And then paint that in. And remember, this is on the second layer, not the original layer, but it's its own layer now. Okay, So now what we have is two different colors, dark and then light above. You want to make the light layer a little bit smaller. So go to your transform tool, which is Command T, and then you can hold down Shift, and that will evenly size everything. So I'm just going to go something like that, and then push Enter. So you can see here that that is just on the inside. Now go to your bottom layer, and you want to blur that a little bit to create more of a soft, so not such a hard edge there. So somewhere around 14 should be good. So that's pretty soft. You can see the before and after. I'll show you. So before and after. It's really nice. So now go up to your other layer, your light layer, and I'm actually going to call this lens flare light so you know what I'm talking about. And you're going to blur that one as well a tiny bit. So same thing, go down to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and this time you're going to only do maybe 5 there. So it has a little bit of a hard edge, but not so much as before. Okay. Now, this layer underneath, the dark layer, you can copy that, which sometimes I do, and you can make an even wider lens flare here to make it look like it's bleeding out, which is kind of cool. So you just go to your free transform and just widen that a little bit. And that's a little bit too blue, so I'm going to take it down. Something like that. And then I'm going to take down the very top layer, the opacity, just a little bit. Okay, something like that. So now the last step is one more thing. Just create a blank layer above it and just call it lens flare blue. So we're just going to create some more blue here. Go to your brush, hit B on the keyboard, and go back to your original color, something similar like that. Same thing, you're going to change it to overlay, and you're just going to paint like that. So it's creating this cool blue like it's coming from the boosters. It's a little bit too bright for me, or too colored, so I'm going to turn down the opacity and maybe paint in some right there and make my brush a little bit bigger and do something like that. Maybe just coming off screen. You can just add this however you'd like. Anyway, there's the lens flare, and I see here that I actually need to move it down a tiny bit. So that's the basic of the lens flare. You can create it however you'd like. The one that I've created looks just like that. So you can actually add more levels to this, which I'll do in a second here. So you can basically, these layers that you have right here, you can just hold down Option. So to select them all, you can click the top one, then hold down Shift and click the last one you want to select. Hold down Option or Alt and just bring it down, just like that. And so you can do something like that, have multiple lens flares, and you can erase some. So if I want to erase it, I'm just going to merge the layers, go back to overlay, go to my eraser, and just erase some over here. And maybe some over here. So you can make it a little bit dimmer. You can copy it again, bring it down. So there's a lot of things you could do. You could bring it up here, bring it down here. So anyway, that lens flare looks nice. I'm actually going to leave it up here. So we got to do a few other things now. This guy right here is shooting a rocket, and so we need to create the rocket, and we also need to create some of the smoke that's coming off of the rocket. And then I think we have a couple other things. We have some gunfire, and then we have some shrapnel. And those are pretty simple. It's not going to be too hard. Let's go ahead and create the smoke from this guy right here. So create a blank layer above him and just call it rocket launcher smoke, just so I know what I'm doing here. Rocket launcher smoke, and go to your brush, pick a white color and opacity 100, and just pick, let's see, probably this one right here. So this is just one of the smoke brushes again, and all you're gonna do is create some smoke coming off the back of this thing. So you want to make it, the closer it is, this is just how I did it, but the closer it is to the end here, the smaller my brush is. Then as I go out, I kind of fan it outwards, something like that. And you can just kind of play with that a little bit. You can, another thing you can do is switch brushes and add some other textures in there. So that's looking pretty good. Maybe make it a little bit smaller there, and you're just dabbing around, just kind of playing around, whatever looks good. Okay, and then you need some smoke coming from the front of his rocket launcher here. So I'm gonna go back to my smoke brush. These come really in handy. I mean, you notice smoke and fog brushes, you use them everywhere to create cool atmosphere. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to make it such a stream of smoke because that looks kind of weird. So I'm just going to dab a few like this, maybe make it a little bit bigger. And I want to separate those a little bit more. Okay, something like that. And now you need to create the rocket from this guy. And all I did for that, super simple again, you take one of these bullet shells. So let's just grab, let's say, where's it at? Okay, let's grab this one right here. I'm just going to hold down Option and copy it outside of the group. And I'm going to call this just rocket. So here you got your rocket, okay? So I guess it doesn't matter where it's at as long as it's over everything. So let's just put it, let's just keep where it's at, right there. So on this, you just want to turn it a little bit so it's in the right direction, okay, something like that. Make it a little bit smaller, and all we're going to do is we're going to take off most of this, and we're going to make this look like a rocket. And you're not going to see it too much because there's going to be a lot of smoke covering it, but just go to your pen tool, and you can just cut it off like this. I'm going to make it look a little bit 3D there. Right click, make selection, okay, and delete. Perfect. So this is looking, you know, a little bit odd right here, so you can reshape this if you'd like. So go to your pen tool again, and you can make this look a little bit more, or just give it a little bit more perspective. So I'm going to create more of a round edge here. Something like that. Select this, right click, make selection, and I'm just going to delete that. So it has a little bit more perspective there. I'm maybe just going to cut off that. Make selection, okay, and delete. Okay, so I mean this is just really the front of the bullet. It's, you know, you don't have to go too crazy with this. And from this you want to create some fire coming off the back. So create a second layer above rocket and just call it rocket fire. We have a lot of rockets here, okay. Rocket fire. So go to your brush, and as we did before to create the gunfire, like right here, we're going to do the same thing but on this. So go to one of your lens flare brushes and pick an orange color and do something like that. Okay, and then once again what you're going to do is you want to pick a lighter color, make your brush a little bit smaller, and click, and then a little bit lighter, make your brush smaller and click, something like that. Okay. And now this doesn't really make sense to have these flares, these light flares coming off in this direction. So I'm going to erase some of those. So go to your eraser, and you're just going to erase above here a little bit and make it more directional. Okay, and go back to my brush, and I see that I've erased some there, so just go something like that. And then go back to my eraser and just erase these lines there. Okay. Alright, and now you want to create some smoke coming around this. So go to your brush, and we're actually going to make another layer above this, and just call it rocket smoke. And go to one of your smoke brushes and make sure it's white at 100% opacity. And you are just going to paint in some smoke coming off of this thing. And I actually need to change some of the perspective here. And I want to erase right there just to keep some of the fire, some of the flame. Okay. Actually going to bring this down a little bit more. And I want the rocket fire to be a little bit stronger, so something like that. Now on the rocket, I'm going to adjust this a tiny bit. So I'm going to start from here. And if you don't know how to use a pen tool, super simple. You click in one spot, and then what you can do is click in the next spot, and as you're holding down, you can move that little cursor, and it'll make a nice curve there. And then what you can do is hold down Option or Alt, and then you move that in the direction where you want to do the next line. Right there, it creates a nice just curve. Or you can just do like that, which is probably simpler. So I'm going to go make selection, and I'm going to delete that. And you know what? When I'm deleting this, I actually want to create, because it's looking like too hard of an edge, so I'm just going to feather that at 2. So it's a lot, that's a little bit too much. So I'll actually do a feather of 1. There. It's looking a little bit better, and then what I can do is maybe make it a little bit more noticeable. So, oops, sorry, that's not working either. So to make it more noticeable, I'm just going to bring it forward a tiny bit. You can actually make this a little bit smaller, so I'm holding down Command T. Okay, so that was pretty simple. If you want some, this is looking pretty orange over here, so maybe what I'll do is turn the saturation down. So what you can do is hold down Command U, brings up hue saturation, and just bring saturation down a tiny bit on each of these rocket fire levels, or layers, sorry. Same thing on the top layer. And on the bottom layer. Okay. If you want, you can even have some fire coming off of this. So all you do is just go to your brush. You can do like a soft edge brush and go to your color here. Create a layer above that and just call it whatever you want, rocket light. And oops, and turn that to an overlay, blending mode. And then you just paint kind of in this direction, just like that. You know, so something looks like it's coming off a little bit more. Something like that. There's also a little bit too much smoke around this thing. So what I'm going to do is go to my eraser, And for my eraser, I'm going to choose the smoke brush. And I'm just going to turn the opacity up and just erase rocket smoke. Right here, just erase a little bit around there. Okay, and then I want to create, I can go back to my brush, and I want to create some more smoke, but more directional, I think. So I got some on his arm, so I'm just erasing that. Okay, so rocket is right there, and you got some rocket smoke. Like this guy is shooting over here. I'm gonna add some more smoke, maybe. Oops. A little bit right there. So he has smoke coming off the back and some smoke coming off the front, and you see the rocket right there that's going to hit this dude. So now I'm going to create some highlights on this wall from the rocket because it's super bright and it's about to hit the dude. So to do that, I'm going to go all the way down to my background layer down here and all the colored layers, and I'm going to create a blank layer above it and just call it rocket light. I probably already named like 5 layers that, but it's cool. Okay. So go to your brush, and you're just going to pick a soft edge brush, maybe opacity around 50, and pick a similar orange color. Then you want to turn that to an overlay, blending mode. Super simple, you just paint. So check that out. You can see it's like the rocket smoke, or sorry, the rocket fire is close to the wall and it's about to hit the guy there. So there you go with that. We really only have couple other things to do. Some coloring, we have some shrapnel, which is super simple, and some gunfire. So let's go ahead and do the shrapnel really quick. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. Let's see, where is shrapnel? Somewhere here. Okay, it's actually on the final image. So you can see all of the shrapnel right here coming off of the ground, coming off of whatever it is. So that's super simple to create. I basically copied, and I'll show you how to do this, but you cut out tiny pieces of dirt or glass, and you get maybe 6 or 7 of them, and then you copy them just like we did with the bullets. You copy them and you turn them and you twist them, and you just make them look each different. So let's go here to dirt. So basically, all you need to do is use your pen tool to cut out some of these. So I'm going to double click here to make it a layer and just have an extra layer right there. So go to your top layer and go to the pen tool. And let's pick this piece right here. So I'm just going to click and drag on that, and then hold on Option or Alt to bring my little thingy, whatever the heck that's called, the line over. Same thing there, bring the line over. So the reason why you want the line to be facing your next dot, or where you want your next dot to be, because if it's out here, check this, when I click, it automatically makes a weird curve. So you want to keep it in the same direction of the dot. See, when I click there, it's a solid line. Okay, so once you got that, right click, make selection, feather it maybe at just 0. And what you want to do is inverse this selection, so go hit Shift Command I, I'll invert the selection, and hit delete. So now you have your rock. You can deselect by hitting Command D. Oops. It's all messed up, okay. So there's your first rock. Next rock, I'm going to copy the layer, always want to keep an original. So same thing, go to your pen tool and just start outlining some of these rocks. And so we're going to go ahead and create some of our shrapnel now. Okay, so remember invert selection, so Shift Command I, delete it, and hit Command D to deselect. Or you can just go select, deselect, you know, it's all there. Okay, so now that we got our 2 rocks, I use probably 10 rocks on this. 10 rocks, a few glass shards. Actually, no, I don't think I use glass shards, just mainly rocks. So let's see here. You got your 2 rocks here for shrapnel. So I'm going to bring them at the very top, above everything. And go right there and just call them rocks so I know what I'm working with. Okay. So now with these rocks, let's see where they're at. And they're for some reason invisible. Okay, because there we go. Alright, so let's zoom up a little bit here. So let's say we want shrapnel coming off of this guy or something, or off the ground here. So you want, first of all, you want your rocks to match up the background. And right now they're really brown and you want them to be different color because that doesn't match up with the background. So what I'm going to do is make them a little bit lighter. So I'm going to put some curves on this. I'm going to hold down Command M to bring up my curves. And I'm just going to bring this slider up a little bit. Sorry, not slider, this little dot. It's going to make it a little bit brighter. See, like that? That's going to focus more on the highlights. And that's pretty good for me, so I'm going to hit OK. And it's too brown, so I'm going to take down some of the saturation. Hold down Command U to bring up the hue and saturation, and just desaturate a tiny bit. Something like that. So that's matching up better already with the background. And I think that should be okay, that color, because you can see there's some darks over here, there's some browns over here, so this is matching pretty well with this. See, you can barely tell it's there, so I'm fine with this color. You need to do the same with the other one. Again, I'm going to bring up my curves, Command M, a little bit brighter, and then Command U for hue and saturation and bring that down a tiny bit. Or you could put an adjustment layer on it and make it a clipping mask, but for me this is a lot quicker. Okay, now, super simple. All you do, hold down Option or Alt, and you just drag. See that? It makes a copy. And then you hold down Command T, and you just twist it, and you can make it a little bit bigger. You just put it in a different spot. Then if you want this one, you can hold down Command and click on it, and it'll select it. And then make a copy, so hold down Option or Alt and just drag it over. And then if you want to change the size and shape, go to your free transform, so Command T is the hotkey. Make it a little bit bigger. And then you can also copy that, go to that one, copy that, make it a little bit smaller, something like that. Same with this one, copy it, make it a little bit smaller. So basically this is what you're doing for all of the shrapnel, and it takes some time. Something you can do to save time, first of all you're gonna need more rocks than just 2. This is just kind of an example that I was giving you guys. Maybe 10, 15 rocks, something like that, so that you get kind of a variety and it doesn't all look the same. So one thing I like to do that saves some time is I will kind of clump these together, and I'll make a little bit more rocks here. I'll just put a little bit more variety in. So something like that. And see how you have all these rock layers? You can actually put them in a group, which is probably a lot easier. So here's all my rock layers. I'm going to select all of them, so click the top, hold down Shift, click the bottom one, selects all. And then all I do is I copy it. So I hold down Option and drag those layers up, and hold down Command E to merge them. So now I have a merged layer like that. And then what I do is I hold down Command T for the free transform, and I start transforming groups of rocks. So instead of individual rocks, you can transform groups of rocks. So see that? It looks a lot different. It's adding some variety here to this shrapnel. Then you can just kind of intermingle these rocks just like that, kind of switch it up a little bit, bring one in here, so you can see the variety this has created, that I've created with just 2 rocks. And you can't really tell that they're similar. They all kind of look different, you know, a few look similar, but you know, if it's that way, then you can just separate these a little bit, you know, something like that. So anyway, that is how you create the shrapnel. Let me show you the finalized image here and what we have created. So we did that with all the shrapnel here and also all this shrapnel over here by this guy's head. Where else? And maybe this shrapnel right here. So it's pretty simple. It just takes a minute to do. So let's go ahead now and create. We have 2 more things to do. We have to create the bullet fire, which is right here. I'll show you how to create those. And then we got to change the colors. So let me show you the colors here. Check that out. So once we have that done, then we will have our final image. So let's go ahead and do the gunfire. I'm actually going to get rid of this lens flare right here because I'm not liking it too much. It's not that one. I can't seem to find it. Awesome. There you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and create these right here. So this is another simple thing. The thing with this whole picture is it's full of a bunch of tiny, semi-simple things that you have to create, but there's just a lot of them. And there's really small details that bring this whole image together. So let's see here. With this gunfire, it's similar to the lens flare, except for you were just going to use your brush. So let's go ahead and create let's go to the top here and create a layer above everything and just call it gunfire. And then go to your brush and go to opacity about 100 and make sure it is a soft brush again. And then you're going to pick an orange color like I already did right here, something around there. All you're going to do is brush across, something like that. Okay. Then you want to click, get another color, a lighter color. A lighter shade of the same color. Make your brush a little bit smaller and just go on the inside like that. Same thing, get a lighter color, make your brush a little bit smaller, something like that. And I actually don't want it to be that bright, so I'm going to go a little bit darker. Okay, so that's the basic, the base of this gunfire. So now you want to add some motion blur to this. So you got that layer right there. So really simple, just go filter, blur, motion blur, and make sure to get the right direction here. Let's see what that looks like. Okay. Perfect, something like that. So there you go. That is your gunfire, and you can do over here. I obviously did a little bit more yellow of a color, and on the one we just created is a little bit orange. But then you just hold down Command T. You can place them how you want, you know, something like that. Then you can hold down Option or Alt, drag, make a little bit smaller. You know, so there's gunfire going everywhere. On here, similar thing. That's all I did, and then I just added a tiny bit of a tail to the end of that. And the way I did that is, let's do something similar here. Made the gunfire a little bit smaller like that. And then all I did is I copied that one right behind, made it a little bit smaller. And then I added a little bit more of a motion blur to this. So I'm going to go again to blur, motion blur, And let's see here. Oops, that's a little bit too much. Okay, so there, something like that. So it's really simple. That is probably one of the easiest things. You just, you're just using your brush, and that is what we've done a lot here with the gunfire, with the smoke, or sorry, not the smoke, but just the gunfire, the rockets over here. So that's the basic idea, just kind of what I showed you with that. So, alright, we are almost done. Let's just do the coloring, and then we're going to be good here. So, I did some hue and saturation just to saturate the fire over here. So what I did is I made an adjustment layer here, hue saturation, and just turned up the saturation to about 23. So if you see here, you can tell that it's just the fire that's affected. And the way that I got it to be like that is I just painted black over this image. And let me show you an easy way to do this. So you go down here and create hue and saturation level, or sorry, layer. And you can saturate everything to 23, what I did before. See, it's going to affect the whole image. So what you want to do here, a quick way, is you can hold down Shift Command I. Oops, sorry. Actually, that's not going to work. Where's it at? You go, it's not select, it's image, adjustment, and you go invert. So you can hold down Command I. So then it inverts this layer to black. So it's really not affecting anything. If you can see there, I'm clicking on and off. Now it's not affecting anything. So what I want to do is paint in white over this image right here, over the parts that I want to be saturated. See how it's doing that? It's showing you here this little white bubble that you've painted over. Same with over here. I want to paint over the fire, something like that. Maybe down here, a little bit right there behind. So anyway, that's how you do it. And you can also do it the other way, where you just create a layer. Let's do it really quick here. You create a layer, saturate the whole thing, and then you can paint. So I'm black here. You can paint in black what you don't want so saturated. See, that's taking away the saturation from all there. And that's because I'm painting black. Okay, so anyway, you guys get the point. So I'm going to delete those layers. So that's the first thing, to saturate the fire. Next thing is color balance. You can see here I've added some blue to the whole image. Now I've actually wanted to add blue just to the kind of the top here, this top half. So I did the same exact thing. Let me show you my settings first of all. So here on the midtones, I just went -13 towards cyan and 30 towards the blue. And then highlights just a little bit, -2 towards cyan, and then +15 towards the blue. So that's all I did on the color balance, and you can see the difference here. It's a little desaturated, then it's just a nice blue. And all I did with that is create an adjustment layer, color balance, and I'm just going to do this quickly. So see here how the whole image is blue. So all I did is I went to my brush and I painted in black, because see how this is white right here? The white means that it is affecting the whole image. So I'm just painting in black. And I'm at 100% opacity here. See how that's taking away the blue from all that, and it's just changing it back to its normal color. So it's taking a minute here, but you can see it's painting back in the normal color, and you can see all that black stuff that I painted. So anyway, that's what I did with the color balance right here, just so the blue would affect the sky and the top half of the image. And then last thing is levels. I want a little bit of a red tint. So all I did here, I left all this alone. All I did was went to the red channel, and move this slider down here, the output levels, this will affect the darks or the shadows. I just brought output level to 19. So see that there, it is the shadows are just its normal color, and then I brought it over a tiny bit. Then also blues, this is the only other setting. I added some yellows in here, so same thing with the output level, I just brought it over to 250 from 255. So it adds a tiny bit of a yellow tint, barely. So anyway, there you go guys, there's our image. This is the original one I created, and this is the one we created together really quickly. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Look out for more tutorials, and I'd love to hear your guys' feedback, what you guys think, and I will see you soon.